This fake doctor with no medical training used a YouTube video to try to perform kidney surgery on a woman while drunk, which then ended the patient's life. Welcome back to another episode of How Is This Title Real?
Horrifying case coming from Uttar Pradesh's Barabanki has exposed the scale of danger posed by illegal clinics operating in the shadows. A 30-year-old woman, Monishra Rawat, has died after a fake doctor tried to perform kidney stone surgery by watching a YouTube video while he was drunk.
How incompetent and evil do you have to be to operate on someone without a medical degree, nor knowing what you're doing? Like, there are stories you read headlines for that immediately sound fake, like they're written just to get clicks or, shock people and get them to share it. But this one, it's one of those stories, but the only problem is every part of it's real. So in early December, a woman in northern India named Marisha Rawat, she went to a neighborhood clinic because she was in serious pain. She wasn't doing anything reckless. Again, she just went to a clinic, so this wasn't some underground treatment. She was doing what millions of people do every day when something feels wrong. In fact, the local clinic she went to had been operating openly for years. So it's not really crazy that she trusted the person inside to help her. But instead, she was taken to a back room and operated on by a man with no medical degree, no surgical training, and no license to practice medicine, while he was following along some YouTube tutorial video on how to perform a surgery. Like, this story has me in disbelief. How is this possible? And then, of course, just like all of my videos, it gets worse because, to make things worse, according to the police and family statements, he was drunk at the time of the surgery. Yes, he was drunk watching YouTube performing surgery. Like, this is one of the most shockingly stupid things I've covered in ever, honestly. Drunk watching YouTube performing surgery without a medical degree nor any knowledge of how to do the surgery to begin with. That sentence in itself makes my brain short circuit. And what makes this even crazier is this wasn't some minor procedure either. This was not a quick mistake gone wrong. No, the man running the clinic diagnosed Marisha by pressing her on her stomach with his hands, and he told her husband it was just a stone and said it needed to be removed immediately. He warned that waiting could be fatal, and then he quoted a price, lowered it when the family could not afford it, and then proceeded as it was completely normal. It sounds like he was trying to sell a car, not tell someone they needed a life or death surgery. This is so disgusting on so many levels. But this is also where the story should have hit, some sort of limit. Surely someone else would step in, like a real doctor was called or something like that, because, this was supposedly a legitimate clinic that's been operating openly for years. But unfortunately, none of that happened. Instead, the man propped up a YouTube video and began operating without understanding where to cut, how to control bleeding, and what he was damaging inside the body. Without going into too many details, he severed a whole bunch of things he shouldn't have and damaged a whole lot more. And through all of this, the kidney stone that he claimed to be removing was never taken out. So the whole thing was just completely unnecessary. It was a sham to scam the family out of money. And the patient and victim in this story, Marisha, she passed away the next day. Unfortunately, she left behind a husband who took her to that clinic believing that he was actually helping her, and 3 young children who now have to live with the fact that their mother trusted the wrong person in a place that should never have actually been allowed to exist to begin with. And if you're thinking, hey, this sounds like something we've already covered before, yeah, you're not wrong, because we've talked about the fake nurses, we've talked about the fake dentists, we've talked about people forging credentials, lying their way into medical jobs, and somehow surviving for years before getting caught. The difference here, though, is those people at least pretended to know what they were doing. This guy absolutely didn't do that. He didn't even bother with that. I guess to understand how something like this even happens, you kind of have to understand who the man running the clinic was and why nobody stopped him. So the clinic that Marisha was taken to was called Sri Damodar Aushalai. There are definitely names in the story that I'm absolutely butchering, so I am so sorry in advance. But this was not some pop-up operation. The man in charge, his name was Gyan Prakash Mishra, and he was not hiding in the shadows or pretending to be someone else. He was a former village head known locally as Pradhan, and he also held a religious influence as a Mahant. From what I could find online, a Pradhan is an elected head of a village, kind of like a mayor, and a Mahant is a religious leader, usually in charge of a temple. So in other words, he was a person that people actually trusted. So when someone like that tells you that your wife needs immediate surgery and delaying it could end her life, most people, unfortunately, unfortunately would not argue too much with them, especially given the context they were in a village in India. And unfortunately, they didn't go get a second opinion, even though it seemed like he was just trying to scare them to get money. Like, this is just so much sicker than I originally thought, because like, this wasn't just like medical fraud. This was a social trust being abused in the worst possible way. According to police and family statements, when it came time for the actual surgery, Gyan did not bring a licensed doctor nor transfer her to a hospital. Instead, him and his nephew allegedly watched surgical videos online and followed along as they went. So this is just family crime. This is kind of like that mom and daughter who also botched a surgery together and ended up unaliving someone as well. In that case, a mother and daughter duo, Libby and Alicia, they were running an illegal cosmetic surgery operation out of unlicensed locations like motel rooms. They posed as medical professionals and performed BBL procedures without proper training. One of their patients then passed away after complications from the botched procedure. So sadly, this kind of stuff is starting to become familiar. At least in the mother and daughter case, they were convicted of manslaughter. This story doesn't really have an ending like that yet, but more on that in a minute. So authorities determined that it was a one-off mistake, but an ongoing scheme, with both family members actively involved. Charges were filed after the victim's passing, and this case kind of became a warning example of how underground medical operations can thrive when people rely on confidence instead of actual credentials. I know I've said this before here, but since this is becoming more and more normal, it's almost like you should ask for any type of paperwork or requisites to prove that your doctor actually is a doctor. Obviously, this diabolical situation happened in India, but there are a handful of situations that we've also been covering that have also happened in the US as well. Not this drastic though. In the US, from what we've covered, the most common scams are dental and plastic surgery scams. But I do have the question. I want to see the video that the doctor was actually watching, because I can honestly say I have never searched for this until now. But after researching this, I fell down a whole YouTube surgical rabbit hole. So most of the videos that are actually allowed to stay up don't show real people being cut open. They show diagrams and animations and stuff that looks like sewing tutorials. It's just a bunch of gloved hands moving thread through rubber or fabric. I did find some stuff that was actual internal surgery videos, but it was mostly on other websites. Those are not easy videos to watch, but now I guess I know how to make a figure-8 stitch. Don't worry, I won't be trying that on a patient. Actually, you can book a surgery with me down below. That was a joke. But all the stuff I saw on YouTube seems to be like educational in a beginning of med school way. Like, this is to help you learn while you're going through med school, not to learn as you're going through the actual surgery. But since this happened now, I'm just waiting for some grifter to be like, hey, ChatGPT, can you walk me through this surgery that I'm currently doing right now? Yeah, I mean, this is so dystopian at this point, but essentially there's a very real chance that this man was not watching a real surgery at all. He may have been watching an animation or a stitched practice demo or a simplified training clip meant for students who already know anatomy, and then deciding to, I guess, apply this information directly to a living human being. Oh, which is straight up insanity. Put this fake doctor under the prison, because this is horrifying. I do wish we had his YouTube history though, because I want to see which videos he was watching as he was doing this. I also wonder if he at least watched this get ready for surgery video. Like, how committed to the bit was he? Actually, scratch that. That's a dumb question. He went through the actual surgery. He was very committed to the bit, unfortunately. Essentially, what he did was like watching a driving tutorial made entirely of diagrams and then decided, hey, I'm qualified to drive a bus full of people through traffic. Actually, no, this is still worse, because you can't just pull over when things go wrong. Once you cut into someone, there's no undo button. Yet, that seems to be exactly what happened here. So, witnesses say the incision was deep and uncontrolled. The kidney stone that supposedly required immediate surgery was never removed. Everything about this points to improv, panic, and someone realizing way too late they had no idea what they were doing. By the time Manishra's condition started to collapse, it was already way too late to undo anything. After the surgery, her pain got worse. According to family members and the villagers, she was suffering badly, and the people who had to cut her open were clearly clueless. There was no plan for complications, no emergency care, and no real attempt to fix the damage that they actually caused. And this was not a situation where the doctor realized something went wrong and rushed a patient to the hospital. This was a situation where two untrained people tried to manage a disaster that they created themselves. Because Manishra, she lost her life the very next evening. And once she was gone, the behavior of the people responsible made it very obvious that they knew how serious this was. Because instead of calling authorities or staying to explain what happened, the clinic operators, they fled. The illegal clinic that had been running openly for years was suddenly locked up and abandoned, and the people who were so confident the day before now were nowhere to be found. According to Manishra's husband, that that was not the end of it either, because he later told the police that the clinic owner attempted to quietly settle the situation by offering money to the family. So they didn't panic over someone passing away. They went straight to trying to buy their way out of it. What a cruel world. But thankfully, the family refused. And that night, people in the village got really angry. Family members and residents brought Munishra Rawat's body into the street and blocked the road in protest. And for hours, traffic was stopped as people demanded action. It took a woman passing away, a body placed in the road, and public outrage for the authorities to finally step in. Police then arrived and eventually convinced the crowd to disperse. And once the police were there, they filed a complaint, ordered a postmortem, and filed charges. And only after all of that was the clinic officially sealed and declared illegal, which is absolutely insane. It took the village blocking the roads for them to file charges and shut the place down. And then the men responsible are already gone. Police have since confirmed that both the clinic owner and his nephew are gone, and they currently have teams deployed to track them down. A case has been registered, including charges related to negligence and violations under the SC/ST Act. Officials say that arrests are expected, but as of now, the people who did this are still on the run. But unfortunately, somebody's already paid the price. And at this point, it would be easy to treat this as a horrifying incident involving one reckless man who should have never been near a patient, but the longer you sit with the story, the harder it becomes to believe that explanation. Because as I mentioned earlier, this doesn't feel that rare anymore. Like globally, you have medical fraud everywhere. Because just in the last year, we've covered stories from fake nurses, fake dentists, or illegal cosmetic procedures, and the details are starting to blur together. This is the first time I covered a medical fraud procedure though. The most depressing part about all of this is this clinic stayed open for years because I guess it just blended into daily life. People trusted it and no one looked too closely until someone lost their life. There was a World Health Organization report released in 2016 that claimed a large percentage of people practicing medicine in India did not have proper medical qualifications, and the government rejected that report and said that the registered doctors must meet minimum standards. Unfortunately, I don't really know if I believe their statement, because regardless of what they say, it seems like this is a whole thing. Villages with fake doctors selling surgeries like they're selling cars. Because at the end of the day, an illegal clinic operated openly for years. A man with no medical training performed surgery and even used YouTube videos to essentially guide him through this surgery and replace formal education. At a certain point, the jokes stop being about how ridiculous this is and start being about how predictable it's become. Because I would love to say we're not going to cover some horrifying medical fraud in the future, but unfortunately, we probably are. But I guess all we can really do is scream really loud and make as many people aware of these scammers as possible. Because at the end of the day, nobody deserves the outcome that Munishra or her family had to go through. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.